have entered the realm of dead air. For the next 2 hours, you will be transported into the world of the strange and the supernatural. You might not feel the need to cleanse your laptops or mobile devices afterwards. But it might not be a bad idea.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. It is our Sunday night show. We are finally back. Thank you guys for joining us there in the chat. We are so blessed for our guests and discussion tonight. We're going to be bringing them on in just a few minutes. But again, my name is George Lopez. With me, as always, Mr. Ken DaCosta. We're simulcast with KGRADB.com, KGRA on Facebook, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you guys join us this evening. As always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, also the thumbs up for our content, and a reminder bell for all the wonderful shows you'll find right here on the Dead Air channel. And Ken, you and I have been talking, and I just want to make this brief announcement. Those of you who follow us also on social media followed on Facebook yesterday when we had to make the announcement of the passing of a four-legged family member. And there was a ton of you that responded with your condolences and your thoughts and prayers, and we greatly appreciate it. That is believe it or not, this falls under the category of paranormal, Ken. It's a 23-year-old Chihuahua, Chico. And Chico yesterday had a tremendously bad seizure at home here, and brought it to the vet. And we were consulted and said it's a tumor. Chances are they will be worse, those seizures. It would be in the best interest of the animal's life to let him move on, which we did. Quick shout out to my neighbors, Dennis and Anne Marie, who took care of my father, 89-year-old father, while I was at the vet on Saturday. So thank you guys all for your thoughts, and we really do appreciate it here with the family here in Palm Coast. And also, Ken, you also responded, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, we know what it's like to lose a pet, a member of the family. But if we want to talk about a good life and a great run, so certainly had all of that, and a good family to care for him.
Absolutely. And we still got another four-legged friend that lives with us. So there's always the next one. And that's what rescues and adoptions are all about. And I encourage that for all of you out there, whether you're a cat person or a dog person, is, rescue those animals. Their souls are untouchable, as far as I'm concerned. This subject tonight is not untouchable. As a matter of fact, we're going from a paranoia decades ago to a curiosity, to a fascination, to an absolute investigation, to where we are now, which is fact. Regardless of whether or not the government wants to admit to it, there are things happening in our skies. There are things happening in our waters. And we have been privileged tonight to speak to four of the foot soldiers, those gentlemen who have been out there on the forefront, not only doing investigating, but also presenting to the world some of the things that are being experienced even to this day, but many of them also infamous or famous from the past. And we're so thrilled that we got a chance to grab them for this weekend. And Ken, if you'd like to do the honors and tell us who our guests are this evening.
Certainly would. And this is an episode of Dead Air tonight that I've been looking forward to, because anybody who follows us or follows our stories know that this particular subject is what got me involved in all of this from the time I was a small child. My fascination with this. So there is a lot to talk about tonight, so let's get to it. We have from the Roswell Daily Record, Mr. Toby Martinez. We have Maximo Veron. He's a film director, a film festival director for the event put on by the Roswell Daily Record. We have investigator and the star of Travel Channel's Alien Highway, Chuck Zukowski, is joining us tonight. Hello, Chuck.
Hello.
And finally, geologist and associate professor of earth science at the New Mexico Military Institute. Please welcome Mr. Frank Kimbler.
Oh, thank you guys for joining us. Give me a moment while I grab my thesaurus and dictionary, because this is going to be one of those shows I can guarantee already. Oh, Chuck's doing the Brady Bunch move. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah. The story of a man named Chuck. But thank you all so much for doing this. I'm glad we were able to set this up and for all of you giving us a little bit of your time. There's a lot to cover. But what we thought that we should get started with is a recent expedition at a place that we're all very well aware of, Roswell, New Mexico, and an amazing discovery that was made by all of you there. And as George said, you are the foot soldiers, you're the boots on the ground at these places. As investigators, as civilian investigators, without the constraints that normally come with this type of thing. So you're able to go out there and bring the truth back to us. So we wanted to sort of get this and turn this over to you guys tonight to let us know the who, what, when, where, and whys. And just as a heads up to all our viewers tonight, we're going to accompany this with some photos as well as some video. And we have a chance to upload that. And I'm really excited to see that myself. So, Toby, I think what we'll do is turn this over to you and allow you to set up how all of this came about and what exactly took place on the crash site.
Okay, well, thanks, Ken and George. I appreciate you guys having us on. I work at the Roswell Daily Record. We have a annual festival in town that marks the anniversary of the crash of the UFO. And I've been working with Maximo, who's based in Argentina now, for 2 years. And this year we got a visa approved for him to come and be here in person. So naturally, the first thing I did was I called Chuck because I knew he had just been at the crash site. He had called me while I was at Contact in the Desert and said, "Hey, I just found some material at the crash site." I'll let him tell the story because it's really cool. But as soon as I heard that, I knew I live in Roswell and I've never been to the crash site. Maximo's lifelong dream was to come to Roswell and investigate, so naturally Chuck's a really good friend of mine. He's an awesome guy. So I told him, hey, he was going to be a speaker at our event this year. I said, would you be interested in coming out possibly a day early and maybe taking me and Maximo to the crash site? And Chuck, being Chuck's like, yeah, no problem. Let's do it. It'll be fun. He's like, here's Frank Kimbler's number. Just call him and we'll take it. And he'll go with us too because he's an expert out there too. So that's kind of what kicked it all off. And Chuck, I think I'll let you take it from there so you can explain the dig you did before we went out.
Okay, well, basically, I was out there on June 3rd. I was out with a guy named L.A. Marzullo that was shooting a little documentary for his website. And I told him before we went out to Roswell, there were specific people that we needed to interview, and Frank Kimbler was one of them. And so we set up the interview with Frank Kimbler, and then just after, interviewed Frank, I asked Frank, I said, hey, we're heading out to the debris site. Do you want to come? Well, before I got to finish my sentence, Frank said, hey, if you're going out to the debris site, I want to go. So, I've known Frank for a few years, and I know that the type of individual he is. He's really good using a metal detector. He's really good, very familiar with the area. He lectures about, the debris that he found there a few years ago. So, it's really an asset to have them out there. So we go out there, and it's kind of really interesting. And I want Frank to like chime in also with this, because I was standing next to Frank, and we were actually at the location where the debris was. And the debris, for the people who really don't know what this is, it's back in 1947, Mac Brazel found this debris scattered over 200, maybe 300 yards. And the story is basically a craft came down and skipped off the ground like you would take a Frisbee and you would skip it off of a sidewalk. Well, where it hit the sidewalk and skipped, that's where all this debris was. And then the main body of the craft landed somewhere else. Now, when I was talking to Frank, we seem to think there might be now maybe two locations, and maybe the main body broke up into two locations. I know of a location based on eyewitness testimony. Frank knows one. So that just means we just have more to do. That's all. But while we were there, it was really interesting that Ellie Marzullo was interviewing Frank, and I'm standing next to him. And the cameraman, he had an issue with the camera, and I guess he didn't maybe record the previous 30 seconds. And then the sound guy that was there said, "Hey, my batteries just went out, and we got to fix our equipment." I kind of look over at Frank, and I'm going, "Okay, here we go." And then Frank says, "Hey, do you have your EMF meter with you?" And I go, "Yeah, I brought my kit with me." So Frank goes over and he picks up the EMF meter, goes back to the area where we had the camera issues and sound issues, and started checking the area for high EMF. And he was picking up high levels of EMF. Go ahead, Frank. Why don't you explain the EMF you were picking up?
Yeah, it was weird because I've never had this. I've had my cell phone go out there, but that's common because it's kind of remote. But the tri-field meter, the EMF meter, right where we were doing the filming was spiking, and it was an intermittent spike. It would spike really high, then it would go down and sort of sit at a low level, but it never went to zero. And then that was happening in the area where the camera crew was doing the interview with us. And then the really strange thing is, I've never had this happen because I've flown my drone out there before, but Chuck was trying to launch his drone. The thing wouldn't start. It was in exactly the same area that the tri-field meter was doing odd stuff. And even during the day, the metal detectors were acting up as well. So there's a thing called ground balance, and the ground balance would change a lot. And I don't know why that was happening. I've been out there in all kinds of conditions, but this particular time, things were nuts, and I haven't run across that. The audio was cutting out from the sound guy, and that was even at a different. It would just completely went blank, and then we tried to go back to the area where we walked across it. So I've never run across that. One thing that was really kind of interesting is we probably found more pieces on the two trips that we did out there than I have before in the past, and so I don't know whether it was a little extra moisture in the ground from the rain or what was going on. That had been, the ground was damp 3 or 4 inches deep, but it was not soaking wet. But it was an unusual day for us, but it was a fun day.
Yeah, what was interesting was years ago, I think just after 2002 was when we found our first piece of debris there, shooting a TV show for the Sci-Fi Channel. We were back again a few years after that, shooting another show. And so my sister and I were camping out near the Hines house, and we had the film crew out there. And we woke up the next morning, and the Hines house isn't too far away from the actual debris site. But it's interesting that when we woke up the next morning, our phones, some of the phones were dead. Some of the phones had reset to factory settings, which was kind of weird. All the batteries at the production crew, we were all camping out there near the Hines house the night before we were supposed to shoot. And all the production cameras, their batteries and audio, it was all dead. My vehicle, the battery was dead. Their vehicle, the battery was dead. So luckily I had jumper cables. And when the archaeologist, Dr. Bill Dolman, showed up with the archaeology truck. We ended up, jumping the vehicles, get them going, and then the production crew, we had to wait a couple hours because they had to bring some of their batteries up enough where they could, start shooting. Since then, when that happened, I purchased an EMF meter that has an alarm. My new one does too, my digital one, but back then it was an analog one that has an alarm. So since then, anytime I'm in an area where, there's been activity or some type of UFO sighting or something, I'll turn on my EMF meter and it has an alarm. And so if anything happens while I'm there, we're going to pick it up. Anytime that the meter is going to move, you're going to hear something. But it's pretty cool. It's one of those areas where there's a large. Now I can't say the EMF field or EM field was in the ground at the time that happened to us when we were shooting. Could have been something that flew over, and that's happened a few times before with me in some of my investigations where you just lose all your battery.
Right.
But to see it that day, and then Frank pick it up on the EMF meter. Now what's really interesting, that after he picked it up, he looked at me and goes, "I'm gonna go get my metal detector." And I go, "All right." Now I had my metal detector out there also. Frank uses a Fisher, and then I had a Garrett. Now it was really interesting that there's been metal detecting out there before. I metal detect out there back in 2000, and I didn't pick up anything. And I'm learning now that it's, the metal detector themselves, how they're designed and what
calibrated. They're calibrated for certain metals.
Exactly. And Frank's was calibrated more for gold nuggets, I believe. And then mine was calibrated more for coins and stuff.
Right.
Okay.
And
Now we know why you guys are out there, just looking for that money.
Oh, yeah. So basically,
Looking for alien money.
alien
Hell
money.
yeah.
You bet.
Alien money. That's right.
You bet. And
Pocket change.
That's fine.
Frank found some stuff, and that's when I realized, I kind of tossed my metal detector over my shoulder and said, okay, the next time we come out here, which we did with, Toby and Maximo, I had bought a metal detector very similar to the one that Frank has. And I'll have to be honest with you, I don't do a lot of metal detecting. I'm a field investigator. I have it there, but Frank, while he was out there, I was watching him, and he was kind of like teaching me because he's been doing it for years and his techniques. And damn it, that didn't help.
Yeah. I got a techie question for that. When you're using a tri-field meter, and Chuck, Craig, you can weigh in. What manner of meter are you using? A tri-axis, like a tri-field natural meter?
Yeah, it's actually. If you can see that.
Okay.
Yeah, it measures three. It measures magnetic field. It measures RF. And it measures electrostatics.
Okay,
as well.
so all right. My question was, what was the setting you were on? Were you on magnetic, or were you on some electromagnetic?
You were on electromagnetic, weren't you, on Frank?
Yeah, that one was EM. Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah,
and obviously, there's nothing, man. There should be absolutely nothing out there that's not geological that would set that off under normal circumstances.
What I like about these Alpha Lab EMF meters is they're filtered to try and eliminate most of the man-made EM.
Right.
And even if you use it here in a house, it'll set, when you turn it on, it'll actually set to a level where, okay, this is, the static EM that's going on right now. And anything that goes on beyond that, it'll flag.
Right.
So, there are filters there. When you're out in the middle of the desert and it's going off, it's really interesting. And like Frank was saying, there was a lot of rain before, and there was a lot of moisture in the ground. Moisture has a tendency to interact with aluminum alloy stuff, because it's conductive, and maybe that's a help. And I do need to talk to Frank. I have an idea of why we found some pieces when Toby and Maximo were there that were above ground that weren't in the ground, and I think I know why we found that. It wasn't that. Oh, I will go on that a little bit later, but I can explain why I think that happened.
Yeah, and the
Because
thing
me and
about those
Maximo are
meters
looking.
too, you can set them to RF to eliminate any microwave signals.
I actually
If
sent him
you
an
immediately
RF.
get something, you turn it on RF, okay, it's flatlined, so we know it's not air-to-ground communication, two-way radios, things like that.
Yeah, you can set to RF and look for bugs in your house too if you want, or for cameras in a motel room if you're
Right.
concerned about that. Yeah.
Sure.
Do you want to jump into what happens next? I mean, so that happened on June 3rd, and we were pretty excited about that. So when Frank started getting high EMF, he went ahead and said, "I'm going to go get my meter," and I'm sorry, his metal detector, and he started metal detecting in the general area where we're getting the spikes, and he picked up something, and he's done enough metal detecting out there that he hears a tone, he knows what's ferrous, what's not ferrous, what could be garbage out there, and so he was just like fine-tuning areas in and pinpointing some unusual
It has a distinct sound to it when you run in the metal detectors. The Fisher gold bug, which is what I use. And it's like, this one is like one of the first ones they came out with. It can find a gold nugget like BB size down about 3 inches. I've had the detector for a long time, but you get used to using these things. And when you run over iron, it makes a double beep. It goes beep 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 beep. It doesn't sound quite like that. It's more electronic, of course, which is kind of goofy. But it's a very distinct sound that you get used to, and you can say, "Oh, that's ferrous trash or iron, or it's a nail or whatever." But when you run across other types of alloys, whether it's aluminum or even a bullet sounds different. When you run over a different kind of alloy, it has a very distinct, very sharp ping to it. And I get used to hearing that, so I can pretty well know when I go over the top of something. And the very first hit I got out there was usually I've been out there for 3 or 4 hours and not get anything, not hear anything. But this time it was like 15 minutes, and I got a nice sharp ping, and it was down a couple of inches. And when I dug it up, I'm going, "Holy smokes! I mean, this is like the fastest piece I've ever found out there." So it was pretty exciting. And not long after that, Chuck found a fragment too. So because he started,
kind of. It was like it was kind of really Frank was saying, "You know what, Chuck? If I find another one, it's going to be yours." Because I was out there with my detector and not getting anything. Even when he brought the piece up and he was holding it, I wasn't picking it up with my metal detector. Since then, I've learned a lot about metal detectors and frequencies, and certain frequencies, how they're designed for different types of metals, and that's why I ended up getting a Fisher Goldbug Pro, and that really worked out when we went back there with Maximo and Toby. But he said, if I find another one, I go, "Oh, this area over here," So, and sure enough, he nailed another piece, and it was the funniest thing though.
That's true story. That is a true story, because I said, "Oh, if I find another one, it's yours," and I did give it to him. So I'm saying,
"Oh no, yeah, it's hiding over here somewhere.
Share
I'll find it somewhere over here." But anyway, bottom line is, so L.A. Marzullo is there with his cameraman and their audio guy, and they're kind of like filming. Frank actually pulled this thing out of the ground, so he has a real time of actually digging it up to prove that it was actually found underground. And then Frank puts it in a little container and just hands it to me. Go, "Here you go." And LA's going, "What?" Like, "We just gave him." I go, "Dude, we've been doing this for years. You're just a newbie coming out here."
I got to ask you, gentlemen, it really, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Frank.
No, I just wanted to play a little clip of the road to Roswell here, give you an idea, a bit of the flavor of the trip.
I missed that one. So that's, anyway, it's all, I often.
That's cool. When I flew mine out last time, I was just eyesight, because what I wanted to do was I don't have all the GPS I needed. So I just
took the drone over.
Toby, Maximo, you let the old guys drive.
That
Dude, that's
that
my
video. That video doesn't do Chuck's driving justice.
Let me tell you,
Oh, no.
I had the only truck. I mean, yeah, I mean, Frank's got a vehicle too, but I believe Frank had a flat tire out there, didn't you, Frank? The one
Oh,
time.
we won't talk about the destruction of the flat tire. It was more than a flat tire. It's like I drove into the Walmart parking lot just as I got into Roswell, and the tire was in shreds. I'm going, if it would have happened farther back with I took care of the communications. Now I've got satellite communication. So if I hadn't had communication, it would have been a long time. That's a pretty remote place. By the way, that scene driving down the road is similar scenes have shown up in other documentaries. I was out there with oh great, now I'm going to have an old man like seizure here and not remember who I was out with. Yeah, I know, it's terrible. Ozzy Osbourne. So I was out there with Ozzy Osbourne and his son Jack, and we were driving down the road, and not I, but they were driving down that same road, and Jack says, "Oh, we're going to go out here with Frank and Don Schmidt, and they're going to kill us." And they said that, and they actually put that on national TV. And I'm going, "Oh my God, they can't be saying things like that."
Well, let's play another clip and see if anybody was murdered on the way there.
Yeah, I like to try to go out the other way just to see what it looks like. Take some pictures of what the house looks like now. And then if anybody sees us, at least we can get an idea of who owns the ship and what their thoughts are.
Okay, you want to go back to the same place we went before?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to tell
Let
you,
me paint a picture real quick. Hold on, Chuck.
Okay.
This plays off the Ozzy Osbourne thing. We get out there, and Chuck and Frank look back at me and Maximo and say, "Okay, this is the part where we take your clothes and make you walk home naked from the desert."
And film it and put it on YouTube. No, seriously, the first time
I have to admit that is a comment that was we actually did say that.
We actually did say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to F with them.
That's a good sense of humor. Yes, wonderful. That's a way of putting your filmers at ease. It's certainly questionable.
When Frank and I were out there, earlier the first time and got the two pieces of debris, the vehicle that L.A. Marzulli had couldn't make it, so we had to hop in my truck and go out there because you actually, at one point you're actually 4-bying across the desert, and my own mind driving. I mean, I have a Ram 2500. It's a 2022, so it's about a year old, and it's set up. It's a 4x4 setup to do that because I'm always out, cattle mutilations and other things too, where I'll be out in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of times you got to just drive across, pastures and stuff. So it's not an area where you can just drive a regular car out there. If you don't have some height, if you don't have the right tires, you're not going to make it out there. You're driving over rocks and stuff. But I wanted to bring Frank in on this too, because the two pieces that we found, the deal was at that particular time was, okay, we're going to go off in two different directions and do two different type of analysis on it and see if we come up with the same results. And we kind of did. So Frank, why don't you tell them what you did?
Yeah. Chuck had his work done up in Colorado Springs, right?
Denver.
At Denver. So he had it done in Denver. And that company that he had his done at came up with some really nice information. It ended up being it's an aluminum alloy, and we have found aluminum alloys out there before. And I'm going to tell you what aluminum alloy that it ended up being here in just a minute. And then when they did the test on mine, and I had mine done in Albuquerque at a place called Theta Plate. I had to mention their name because I promised that with the rate they gave me that I would mention their name. So they did product placement. That's right. So they did some work for me when I was on Ancient Aliens, and they did some good, and they came back with an aluminum alloy as well. Now let's talk about what has been found out there. So over the course of the last like almost 12 years, I've probably found 30 or 40 little fragments of metal that are out there. Now, I have to admit, some of it, and I haven't had it all tested, but some of it has been tested. Some of it ends up being, and now I'll explain this to the people that are not scientific oriented, but there are different types of aluminum alloys. There's 1000 series that is used for making pie plates and basically aluminum foil to wrap sandwiches in and things like that. Then there's a 2000 alloy, which is aircraft alloy. We use it mostly for military aircraft. It was used in, it's Duralloy. It was used in World War II for manufacturing the skins on our aircraft. And then there's a 3000 series alloy, which is the sides of the cans. It's what you would find if you were to find trash out in the desert, aluminum trash. So 3000 series alloys are the sides. And then the top and bottom of cans are 5000 series alloys. So here's what has been found out there over the years. I have found 1000 series alloys out there. They're always on the surface. They're very shiny, easy to recognize because they just kind of blow around all over the place. Very corroded, ugly looking stuff. You can, and they're like right on the top. And then I have never found any 2000 series. I've looked for that. No 2000 series alloys. I have found a couple of pieces of 3000 series, but once again, they were very close to the surface, which basically, more than likely, they are little pieces of aluminum cans. Then there's the 5000 series. I've run across that as well, which is the top and bottom of cans. Once again, all close to the surface. Now, a strange thing. I have found the very first stuff that I ever found out there was the 6000 series alloy. The stuff that Chuck took to have analyzed.
I know what that's used for, Frank. Yeah.
Ended up being a 6000 series alloy, and I have found, like I said, 6000 series. Chuck has a 6000 series. 6000 series alloy should not be out there. It's not used for trash. It's used for heavy construction. It's used to build the hulls of aircraft carriers, and certainly not found in stuff that's like paper thin. That's what we found out there was 6000 series alloys, and it should not be out there. It is
well, if you're talking about 60, 70, 60, 80, I mean, that's used in the aerospace industry, isn't it?
It is.
Because of its tensile strength and
its weldability. In fact, Chuck's got a designation back of a 6080, which they said may not be perfect, but it was close. And I looked at it, and it's very close to a 6080, but it's not perfect. In fact, if you were to plug it into all the little gizmos that tell you what alloys are, it's actually an unknown 6000 series alloy.
That's what's pretty cool about this, because when we were doing the testing on it, and it's a general manager of this particular place was doing it, it pops up, and the X-ray spectrometer is trying to identify it. It says, well, it's close to this, but it's not that. And he's just kind of like looking at it with his mouth wide open going, okay, what is this? What are you bringing me that we can't identify? Because usually these places, they when they test metals and stuff, they can identify them pretty quick because they know what they're from, and they're doing maybe analysis for companies to see whether or not, like he said, this particular one failed. Whatever it was made for, that item failed drastically. Looking at it under a microscope, he said this little piece went through extreme trauma, explosive extreme trauma, like as if, and this is his words, as if something exploded, in the air, just obliterated everything. And it's so tiny that when he was looking down to 500 microns, you could see the little cuts and ridges and holes and everything. Because now this isn't anything that I've really seen before. And like Frank was saying, he was, the X-ray spectrometer said, well, okay, it looks similar to this. It has some of the same elements, but we can't identify exactly what it is.
I want to play devil's advocate to these materials and ask this question using the example of those who are out there that are cryptozoologists and those that go out there and find identifying markers or hair from what they assume to be a Bigfoot. They will go to anthropologists who have an extreme database of just about every animal that they have recorded on the planet. Would that be the same database for metals that the person you brought this to would be able to look at, including experimental aircraft, including space shuttles, including the SpaceX flights that are going up? Do they have those designations available already also? Because, again, if it's exploding way up there, or in our certain cases, sometimes the fuel canisters are disengaging from the rest of the rocket and dropping back down to Earth, there will be fragments. Have those also been compared to what it is that you're discovering? Do they have accessibility to those materials to compare?
Well, basically, it's whatever's loaded in the software, and Frank can chime in on this too. So
yeah,
what's ever loaded on the software, I mean, obviously, what's not going to be loaded on the software is any type of alloy that's top secret that we're not supposed to know about.
And that is,
yeah.
And I have to agree with Chuck on that. There's a list that's called the Teal Sheets, TEAL. It's actually online. You can go and download the Teal Sheets, but it lists every single alloy that is registered. Notice I said the word registered, all over the world.
Gotcha.
And also there is if you go out to it's MATLAB or Metallurgical Laboratories Online or whatever, there's one where you can actually just type in the percentages of what the elements are within the alloy, and it'll tell you what alloy it is. But to answer your question, if it is a top secret alloy, it will not be listed.
Okay.
If it is a registered alloy, and I actually tried to get my hands on some weird 6000 series alloys out of South Korea. They were registered, but they had no percentages. And
that's what I was thinking, like the Chinese spy balloon gets shot somewhere in the Midwest in the prevailing winds because it's small particles, gets carried all the way down. We don't have that nomenclature for that type of metal.
No, and I actually contacted the South Koreans for a 6000 series, a new one that they had made.
Wow.
It had a designation on it, but they refused to tell me what was in it or what the percentages were. And I tried to get a piece, and they said, heck no. They use it. That's exactly what they said, almost word for word. They didn't quite use the word hell, but it was close. Because I said I wanted to do some testing on it, and they said, "Oh, we don't." Now get this. They said, we don't have any little pieces of this stuff. We only have big pieces from our foundries that are used to build ships. Yeah, they didn't have it. So anyway, there is stuff out there. But the odd thing about, like I said, the odd thing about 6000 series alloys is you don't find it in stuff that's the thickness of aluminum can. Not saying they can't make it, but it shouldn't be out there.
Now, the piece that my sister and I found back in 2002, when we were, actually it was a sanctioned archaeology dig that was done. We came back the next day while the archaeologists were cleaning up. We did our own dig, a strip dig. We didn't like the way the dig they were doing the dig for the Sci-Fi Channel. We were digging down the Jurassic period. You didn't need to do that. So the piece that we found. And I initially had an electron scanning microscope analysis on it, and it was an aluminum alloy. So I went back the next year to Roswell, and we did a press release asking for help from a lab to help us figure out what this was. And guess who popped up and said, sure, we'll do it. Robert Bigelow. Yes, Bigelow Aerospace. So what I did was I worked with the Maximo Museum over in Albuquerque. We cut a piece off of that artifact, send it to Robert Bigelow or to Bass. And within 1 week, and I swear, I actually posted that on my website back then, the actual email, But the email I got back from them, it said it is not it's an unknown polymer based on the known polymers that we have in the lab, meaning in their catalog. It still falls into a polymer from what they said, but it's unknown. Now they said, okay, it's not. We can't say it's unknown to the planet. It just means that it's not in our catalog.
So
Like
it's
we're
in the
seeing right
periodic
now with the
table.
metal.
It's in the periodic table of elements, but the combination has never been identified before.
Well, it's just like the metal now. You know, it's close to this, but it's not exactly
Right.
that. And
Right.
then my question to them was, what's next? And their lab scientists said, well, we're going to do an isotope analysis on it to see if it's from this planet. And that's the last I ever heard of them. And you can read all about this, you know, in the book, The 37th Parallel and the whole bit. But I mean, it was actually about a year later, I got an email from them after multiple times of trying to figure out what was going on, that they said, oh, it was nothing. We just sent the piece back. And then we later find out in 2017 that Robert Bigelow was under contract with the Pentagon doing UFO investigations. So you can kind of take it from there, you know.
Mhm.
By
Yeah, I
by
want-
the way, that same group, and this was thanks to Chuck. That same group did some of the first analytical work for me as well, and I actually drove my fragments over to the laboratories, which are located in Austin, Texas, I believe, and it was Earth Tech, and it's the labs owned by Hal Puthoff, because he was working for Bigelow at the time, investigating, doing the analytical work for UFO fragments. And, you know, what I thought was, I mean, they had a lab, but they had what's called an air gap XRF, which is not very good for looking at light alloys because it picks up argon in the atmosphere. It's not under a vacuum. And they had trouble doing some identification. And I asked them if they had any standards, and they said, well, no. And I says, well, I tell you what, why don't you just grab an aluminum can out of the garbage?
No
And
doubt,
they actually
seriously.
did that. I was telling them essentially how to do their laboratory exercises. I
Build your
said,
database. Absolutely.
yeah, I says, you know what, take an aluminum can and see how it compares to what I sent you. And they went ahead and ran the scans. They didn't have the data for me. It took me literally 2 or 3 months. And I asked them a simple question. I says, will you tell me if it's extraterrestrial? And they says, oh, we can't tell you that. We can just tell you what's in it. And they sent me the data back, and the data was in like an Excel, old computer printout Excel spreadsheet thing. And it took me a week to decipher it and figure out what the hell they were
Jeez.
trying to do. And I'm going, and then I get this letter saying, well, we don't think it's anything. We think it's an aluminum can. And I'm going, yeah, it's probably a aluminum can that you ran during your test while I was there.
Right.
It
Yeah,
was,
can you
and then-
tell us what it's not, please? You know,
Yeah. You know, those people actually scared me because Hal Puthoff asked me if I wanted to stay for dinner, and I wanted to drive back. I figured they were going to poison me or something. And then that same night, I slept with a gun under my pillow. It was really weird. I'm like paranoid at that time. So,
Matter of fact, on the beginning of June, we went out there and found the first 2 pieces. I had a 9mm strapped to my side, and Frank had a gun on him also, because we had heard rumors that that there was a local rancher there who just bought the property, and they were pointing guns at people who were trying to, you know, get to the free side, thinking that, you know, maybe they were trespassing on the property. Frank actually knows a route that basically you stay from a county road, you're on a BLM property, so you know there's never, there's no way
you get like a scene right out of Yellowstone.
Well, exactly, and that's what I was thinking. I think when we heard about it, I was thinking these yahoos were watching Yellowstone and thought they were all that. And you know, I was a reserve deputy for about 8 years, so I know how to shoot. So I'm not worried about it. It's just you know, the fact that you have to do that is kind of unnerving. Now, when we went back out with with Toby and Maximo, I don't know. Did you have a gun on you at that time too?
I always go. This is the
Yeah.
wild, wild west. I always pack a gun. Always.
Yeah, I had one.
Chuck had a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to get to talking with Toby and Maximo from a filmmaking perspective. My background, half of Ken's background is in spirit phenomena, ghost hunting, and so many of the people that are in the field look for those abandoned buildings to investigate. But we do realize now that there is transient activity all around us all the time. Same principle here. Toby, Maximo, you go out to an abandoned desert, a field that's out there, vast, and yet where you talking about where you came from, Argentina, there are sightings. There are sightings in major metropolitan areas, including Las Vegas, including Phoenix. Was that considered also in your project making, or was it the ambiance of being isolated out here to do this filmmaking and to record what it is that's been experienced at these locations? Toby or Maximo, either one.
Go ahead, Maximo, because you can hear.
Yeah, I want to
sirens
hear
here.
from Maximo because he holds the honor of being the person on this show who's furthest away. Okay, we think when we talk to people from LA, that's a big deal. Argentina, Maximo, the floor is yours.
Okay, guys, thank you for having us. I would start saying that my perspective, it is just like a regular guy who is an independent filmmaker from Argentina.
Mhm.
Although I have been working the last 4 years doing here in Argentina a project that is called Ufology and Paranormal Phenomena International Film Festival. That's
Nice.
a long name, but it's what it's about, right? We did. I tried to do the same with Toby. That's the whole idea. To be in Roswell, another project that we are working on, but that's my perspective. Of course, I'm interested on the field because I have experience before some kind of sighting. So that's why all my life I've been interested about UFOs, but I'm not a researcher. I have the pleasure to have this experience with Chuck, Frank, my friend Toby. I wasn't expecting this is legit. I went to America, and when I was there, I think that Toby told me, or some weeks before, I can remember, okay, we are going to the crash site. This is my first time, says Toby, and I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it when we were, in the place after almost 3 hours on the road, on the dirt. It's a unique experience to try to be there 76 years later.
Mhm.
Try to understand what happened. It is unbelievable.
That must have been incredible to you. Now, this is your first visit to Roswell, Maximo?
Yeah, it is.
All right. So, geez, you get the VIP treatment. You visit Roswell and they throw you in the deep end of the pool. We're going to the crash site. Bonus.
Yeah, for
Bingo.
sure. I got the golden ticket for sure. Thanks
You
to
did.
these guys, of course.
How about
And I
you,
will
Toby?
be
Your
always-
experience.
I will be always thankful for that experience.
Oh, I'll bet.
It was really surreal. I mean, here we are driving down this road, and by the time you get out of the truck, there's no reason for anything to be out there, especially not different types of metals. So never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd go to this place. And these two, this is all thanks to Frank and Chuck. I think we were out of the truck about 20 minutes, and Chuck's over there with his new metal detector, and he finds the first piece. And, we're like, oh my God, me and Maximo are walking around looking like we're just going to find it laying there. We don't have metal detectors. And I I think we went for a couple more hours, and then all of a sudden, Chuck and Frank just found what I would call a hot spot. They pulled out one piece and then another, and then I just hear Chuck yelling at me, "Toby, come here!" Like, what? He's like, here's a little jar. Here's your piece of metal. This is for you. And to me, I grew up here. I had never been out there, but I've always been obsessed with the phenomenon. I almost fainted holding this little piece of metal in my hand. So I go over to Maximo and I tell him, "My dude, if we have to, I'll cut this in half and give you half of it. You're going back to Argentina with a piece." Next thing you know, there's Chuck and Frank. "Maximo, come here." They give him a jar and a piece of metal. So it was, to call it surreal
hang
would be.
Hang on.
See, there he has it right there.
Oh, he's got his Roswell suit.
Chuck,
Look at it.
I can't believe this, Frank. A piece of I don't know what is from Roswell, in the middle of the desert. Now in Argentina, we're looking for the best lab to analyze.
Maximo, hold that up again. I wanted you to hold that up to the camera one more time, if you could. I'm trying to figure out why your fingers are glowing. You're okay. So gentlemen, you handed that piece of metal to the wrong guy, who's got Namaste from Lost and Captain from Breaking Bad right behind him there. So this guy is gonna let his imagination run wild with him. That's amazing.
Stay safe, Maximo. Hey, Toby, while you're telling this story, I wanted to. You can talk right over these pictures, but I wanted you to kind of give us some context on this. Here's the first one that's up.
Well, that would appear to be some dirt, some rocks.
The man is an analyst.
Wow, he's really good at this.
Guys, to be fair, if you check, like in the middle of the picture, you can see something shining.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask about.
Yeah,
that is the piece of metal. Is that the piece you have, Maximo?
No, I think it was the first after the guys took it from the dirt. You know?
Oh, okay.
We do have better pictures like this one.
Yeah, but that kind of gives you an idea of what the terrain looks like. It's not like not like you're on a beach or anywhere. Where you're metal detecting in a nice smooth area. It's pretty rough out there.
Hey, Chuck, what are you doing? I'm sorry. Once you get that metal, what is the direction? What is the purpose behind the collection? Is it reverse engineering, breaking it down to decipher what it is?
No, I ate my piece to see if I could get superpowers.
I knew, Toby. I knew you'd do that.
You're bitten by a spider. Can you give us some context as to how big, how thick that is? What would it be? Common item we could compare it to.
The first couple pieces we found at the beginning of, what was it? I don't know, June or whatever. Frank and I, we basically said, okay, you have your piece tested, or you're going to test it. I have my piece tested, whatever, and let's just see if there's a match. Okay, so that's basically the bottom line there. We wanted to see whether or not we're falling into, that aluminum alloy type of, scenario. Now, the problem is, though, is if you only have one piece, and Frank can chime in about this too, the next steps, the next analysis may involve, it probably will involve cutting it, burning it, doing some other things. You don't want to do that to your only piece of an artifact. That's why, originally when I was talking to Toby and Toby says, hey, can you come out a little bit early before we lecture or before I lecture on Friday, come out Thursday or the night before or whatever. And we go out to the debris site. I'm going, that would be awesome, because if I can find some more debris, then I have a couple of extra pieces that I can use for those analyses to further understand what it is. But you're gonna destroy it, or you may destroy part of it. Yeah. Frank probably. I wanted explain what type of analysis that would be.
Yeah. When we come back, because we're going to break very shortly. But I just wanted to show this picture of I think that's Chuck searching for his keys, and you can see that he's heavily armed.
Yeah, well, that's Chuck's best position anyway.
What I wanted to get back on the break. Wow. When we get back on the break, what I wanted to talk Chuck about, because this in law enforcement, chain of custody. of things like this.
I got a story for that. I really do. A good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I have my own thoughts on that, which falls in line with what Frank's going to say anyway, ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we got a
still
little
time
bit.
for a few more pictures, Ken. Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanted to touch on that, that's fine before we go to break. This
Oh, I
is a
thought we were
little
going-
better shot of that object, I think.
Dead center.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. Pretty good. There's some. Now, I haven't talked to Frank about this. I was going to mention it. That in the past, because I've been there using metal detectors, obviously it was the wrong one. I realize now that you need a metal detector that's designed for gold, to look for gold. It's that frequency, because the ones that I've used in the past and just used earlier or beginning of June, that didn't work. That's why I ended up getting a Fisher Gold Bug Pro, because that's what Frank had. And depending on the metal detectors, depending on the metal, the frequencies are a little bit different, and it seemed to work out really well. Now, as for the pieces that we might be finding on top of the soil or close to the top of the soil, I remind myself back in 2002 and all the archaeology digs that have gone on there since then, where we're using these screens and sifting sand and dirt. Those little tiny pieces would have gone right through the screen. And because that's not what we were looking for. We were looking for big pieces. And the piece that we found in 2002 was a fingernail, and my sister was an eagle eye and found it. But the little stuff we're finding now would have gone through the screens and would have ended up on the top of the soil. Mm-hmm. Frank mentioned that, the MUFON was out there shooting a show, and they had a bunch of metal detectors out there. That didn't work. Why? Because they were using the wrong type of metal detector. So the more we investigate and the more we do in areas like this and understand the type of material where we're finding and what we want to find, we pinpoint the type of metal detectors we're going to use. The type of technique.
Let me ask a quick question, because we're not familiar with the area.
We're right at the top of the hour. Okay. Can we save for the other side? All right. We're going to go to our break, guys, at the top of the hour here. And when we come back on the other side, they're going to reveal to us where the alien home base is located. Stay with us, guys. You are watching Dead or Alive on the Dead or Full Spectrum channel. We'll be back right after this.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
guys, welcome back to the second hour of our show, or the very special guest joining us tonight, Maximo Veron. We also have Toby Martinez, Frank Kimbler, Chuck Zukowski. The topic of the show, what is in our skies, but it also should be titled, what is on the ground. I know Ken's got a question he wanted to start with, but before we do, Ken, I would like to, again, bring up the Ocean State Paracon, any updates, and where people can go if they want to go check this out. You four gentlemen may want to, because of some of the activity that's going on in the skies above this very famous farmhouse. Ken, go ahead.
Very true. So September 9th and 10th in Harrisville, Rhode Island, we are going to bring you Ocean State Paracon 23, and there's a list of guests that we're going to have there. It's going to be held Saturday, Sunday to benefit. All proceeds go to the Tomorrow Fund. Do tremendous work in helping out cancer patients and their families struggling financially. Our good friend, also Michelle Roos, will be in attendance as well. Very happy to announce that this week our vendor tables, our booths, have completely sold out. Wow. So if you're within the sound of our voice and you want to attend for a great cause and meet some great people, strongly suggest you come to this. We kind of call it the Paranormal Farmers Market because everybody sets up outside, and we have a beautiful theater from the early 1900s that seats about 400 people, and all our presentations, our multimedia presentations, will be held inside the air-conditioned theater. So give it a try, help out a good cause, and we'll see you there. It's our 10th annual year, which coincides with the release of the film The Conjuring. So it all works out.
And what I mentioned, Ken, about the sky anomalies happening around the farmhouse, they've been in numerous as well.
Yeah, this is a really weird place for a lot of different phenomenon, because I had taken a group out to do a little sky watching, and I'm like, well, they said that there are things floating through the trees and there have been things in the air. Within 3 minutes of going outside, this tic-tac looking thing, that should be a familiar phrase, is scooting overhead. I mean, this thing is traveling at a high rate of speed. So immediately I start pulling out FAA apps and
Look at him. Look at him. Maximo's already booking a flight up there. Look at him. I see him. He's on his phone booking that flight.
Yeah. So I pulled out FAA apps to identify, known flights, and a drone owner's app, which gives you a green light if you are launching a drone, whether there's air traffic in the air. Absolutely nothing. The ISS was going across South America at the time, so I look at it as the second time in my life that I've seen something that didn't make a lot of sense and was unidentifiable. But we are in a flight pattern, and this particular thing, solid white, I mean, booking. Like, I've never seen anything airborne that fast at about 15,000 feet.
Was it going fast enough that parts of its aluminum would fall off?
No, I doubt that seriously.
Okay. Well, let's get back to our panel, our international panel tonight. Yeah. But I know we left off, and Ken, you had a question?
I do, but as we're going through the context of this, I want to play another video clip of the boys on site, and then we'll come back with my question. So let's give it a look.
Around the base of this.
That's the nice thing about the drones, is being able to.
I'll send this to you.
See stuff like picture.
So here's where the buttons were found. So the buttons were found. Move it around. The buttons were found right here. So we're just to the right on that one.
Okay.
Anyway, that was my drone find on that one. So we should check that out. We can check any place you want, because when I was out here a few days ago, the last piece I found was over to the right, and I can take you exactly where the green area is over here. So it was just to the right, found lots of stuff there, even found some more stuff right where we had originally.
Well, we better probably.
Yeah, we better. If we're gonna
That's the future, man. Drones are the future.
That's a good looking truck.
Are you looking for coordinates there? Or are you just trying to locate a specific spot?
That truck's
no,
amazing.
That location that I was showing Chuck on the tablet was an area that I found with a drone that has never shown up in other aerial photographs. They're perfect squares. In fact, it's when we walked over to it, the squares are not very big. They're 3 or 4 feet across, and the squares look as if they're man-made. They're not geologic. I've seen geologic squares before. So these were odd, and we did go over there and metal detect in the general area and didn't find anything. But it's also right next to, it's within probably 30, 40 feet of where I found some military buttons that they're fatigue buttons, which dated from like the mid 40s, early 50s that were found out there as well. And when the military says they weren't out there, that's not true, because I've got the buttons to prove they were out there, and they are confirmed military buttons from old fatigues, in fact. Mm-hmm. So, and that was found about 3 inches deep in hard packed clay. So the stuff is old. But anyway, it was what I was showing Chuck was some things that I had found using the drone when I was out there last time.
And what Frank was telling me too, that the area where you found the buttons, okay, kind of overlooks the area where the debris, or where he's been picking up pieces of debris, and maybe where all the debris was, would be a perfect place for like a little, bivouac or a tent or something, up above to see what's going,
Oh, it was perfect. It was from that location, it's just below the ridge, so that you couldn't see. You can see down into the lower area, which is just behind me, but you couldn't. No one could see you. So it's a perfect observation point. So it would be great for like a command post for somebody overseeing, and it gave you a 180-degree view of everything around, but nobody could see you from unless they were on top of you, essentially. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. My question was, this object was found on the surface, correct? This wasn't was this a dig at all?
What object was that?
Well, the one we saw in the photographs before.
Oh, the one you saw in the photographs? No, those were all buried 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 inches deep. So.
Okay, so a question that if I was in chat, I'd probably be asking this right now, because the place has been canvassed over the last 76 years. Not being familiar with New Mexico, with the atmospheric conditions and the geology of it, is it remotely possible that some of these things can be unearthed by things like rain, wind, or things of that nature? Is that a possibility, right?
Yes, it is. When you this is like hunting gold nuggets in reverse. This stuff is very, very lightweight, and if it got buried 76 years ago, it would get buried if it was like during a rainstorm. Maybe it got covered up with mud or dirt or whatever, but it would eventually work its way towards the surface. And then in addition to that, there's material that some of that material, it was just an idea that I had, since it floats its way up to the top, there is cattle out there. Cattle eat the grass, they ingest it, they poop it back out. This stuff is getting recycled over and over and over again out there because it works its way up to the surface. It ends up in the grass. In fact, 2 or 3 of the specimens that we found last time we were out there were actually essentially laying on the surface. And it was in an area where basically I didn't get a chance to search over the years because the grass was too high. Now, because it's so dry out there, the grass is dead. It's all pretty much gray and ugly looking, and there's nothing growing out there. And there's like probably 30% of the area directly behind me used to be covered in really tall grass, but that grass is gone, so it makes it easy to do detecting in places we never detected before. Some of this was laying right on the ground, right on the surface.
Yeah. back in 2002, when we were shooting for the Sci-Fi Channel, and I convinced Dr. Bill Dolman to let me and my sister come back out there after the production crew had left to do our own dig. My idea was to dig not in the area where they were digging for the TV show, but to dig in an area where over 60 some years or whatever it was, how long ago it was we did this, that erosion, where the water would settle. That's where I wanted to go, because I figured over the decades, land gets moved around due to erosion and heavy rains and stuff. And so where does the water settle? So I asked Dr. Dolman, Mr. Spock, give me your best guess of where the water would just settle over the years. And that's where he put us. And within my second strip dig, it's when we found the piece back in 2002. And like Frank was saying, and it's cool having Frank there, because I learned a lot from Frank. When we're out there, learning that as water is saturated in the ground, the lighter pieces have a tendency of moving up over the years, and then the erosion, all kinds of stuff. Now,
it's going to be interesting to see if climate change at all.
Well, what's interesting
kind of uncovers and reveals some things there.
Well, I mean, climate change, it depends if you want to look at climate change. I mean, climate change has happened, for the past thousands of years in areas and, where they've been deserts. And I don't think it's anything that we're doing right now that's affecting that. I think it's just a natural progression of Mother Earth. But the cool thing is what we're finding out there proves that something did explode, something did break apart. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter when people say, well, how do you know it's a flying saucer? Well, we don't know it's a flying saucer. All we know right now, it's aluminum alloys. It can't be identified. But what we're proving is all the reports from like Mac Brazel and Fawn Fritz and Dee Proctor and everybody in that, that time frame of 1947 that were out there said something exploded. There was debris there, and we're finding the debris. I can tell you, basically, from what the metallurgical place said in Denver, that something did explode, ripped these little pieces apart, so much trauma. He believes that it was an aircraft of some sort exploded, spraying all this stuff. Now, you got to remember, too, that if they did walk the area back in 47, the soldiers, arm to arm or whatever, and picked up the debris, they would have missed little tiny pieces. Or they could have just stepped on them too and not even noticed it, driving them in the drain.
That's true. And Chuck brings up a good point, because I gave a talk one year during the UFO festival, which was basically, it was almost entirely on explosive forensics of the material that I found out there. And yes, some of the material is melted. You can see it. It shows a very, very plain. Some of it has a puncturing, which is related, looks just like a bullet going through it, except the bullets are very small. So it's been melted. It's been stressed. I've had SEM work done on it, where the SEM operators basically, you can actually, that was on Ancient Aliens. They basically said, oh, this stuff's been through an explosion and it's burnt. And I'm going, okay. So there is enough proof to indicate that something blew up out there and that it scattered material all over the place. Can we prove that it's a UFO yet? No. We can prove that something blew up out there. That I can prove. That's easy for me to prove.
Yeah.
In
your experience, how many weather balloons explode?
Yeah.
Chuck,
I'm speechless on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say to your viewers out there too, that if you go to my website ufonut.com, it won't go into why it's UFO Nut, but anyway, you go to ufonut.com and just look at the last 3 or 4 recent blogs on this. You'll see some close-up pictures of the debris that we found, and then also the piece back in 2002 where I'm actually zoomed in at 80 microns, and you can see the damage of 80 microns of the piece. So it's that minute Not just like you would just say, well, it could just be a can, it could be this. But when you actually zoom in, and Frank, what is a micron? Is it 1 times 10 to the minus 9th? Something like that?
Well, you're asking me, and I'm a scientist, and I can't even answer that question.
I think it's 1 times 10 to the minus 9. So basically, it's extremely small. And you're seeing this explosive,
by the way,
on this metal at that small. It doesn't make sense.
Chuck, Chuck, I've been cued to ask you what happened in the Farley's parking lot after the dig.
Oh my God! You're talking about 2002?
No, I'm talking about our dig.
Our dig in the Farley's parking lot.
Farley's?
Oh, I better not go into that.
Why? Nobody's listening. It's just between us.
Nobody's listening. No.
Hey, I was there. Did I miss something, or
you know what? We should have Toby answer it since he's the one who asked me to ask. So
no, we won't go into that. But the cool thing is like Frank said that we had, we found enough debris that we could, give Toby and Maximo to do their own things too. And like Frank was telling me, he said, if we all go our separate ways and kind of do different analysis, different tests, and we're all coming up with the same conclusion, then the skeptics can't say, well, only one person did it or only one lab did it. And so this kind of makes it skeptic proof that when you have multiple, commercial labs that do this for, a living, coming up with the same analysis.
It's closest thing to a blind study on this if you have different labs doing it.
Right, and you mentioned
the way it should be done.
When you mentioned chain of custody before, okay, now I've done archaeology digs where, it's a sanctioned archaeology dig with archaeologists there. The chain of custody for those type of digs would be with the University of New Mexico when we found it back in 2002. I had to request the piece for me to analyze it. And then we had to request the piece to be cut up and sent to Bigelow because the chain of custody went to the Maxwell Museum in New Mexico. Now, this is debris. It's not really, we don't want to call them artifacts because artifacts may lead some people to think like, okay, they're ancient Native American artifacts or something like that. But if it's a piece of debris from some type of explosive event, other than a space shuttle, because if you find a piece of the space shuttle that exploded, NASA says you must turn that over to NASA. Now, we're finding pieces of metal out here in the middle of nowhere where this thing supposedly crashed. Mm-hmm. So the chain of custody right now is it's open. It's whoever finds a piece of metal. It's up to us to if I have the piece of metal, the chain of custody starts with me, starts with Frank, starts with Toby, starts with Maximo, then goes from there. We are the guys that are controlling the piece ourselves. Now, when the government wants to pop up and say, hey, look, you got to give those pieces over to us. And then we say, well, why? What are you insinuating? Are you insinuating something blew up there? Are you saying you know about something? If you're saying it's a UFO, now there was a law on the books years ago that if people found pieces of UFO, they had to turn them right over to the government. And that was during the 50s. I don't know if it's still on the books, but if the guys show up at my house and say, you've got to turn this over, I say, show me the documentation that tells me that you think it's a piece of a flying saucer, I'll be more than happy to turn it over. I want that documentation. It says the government says this is a flying saucer, this is extraterrestrial. That's just as powerful as having the piece of metal.
By the way, I know people are interested in this stuff, and I'll tell you why. Because the very first fragment that I found, some arrangements was made, and there was only 3 people that knew about this: myself, another scientist, and the scientist at Arizona State University that ran the lab. They were the only ones that knew about this. It was the sample was sent FedEx. It was documented. It was triple sealed inside of a FedEx shipping envelope. I get this telephone call. Matter of fact, this is out on the internet. People can go read about this. The Roswell artifact disappeared in transit to the university. I didn't hand deliver it. I sent it FedEx. So I get a telephone call from the principal investigator, the lady that was running the lab, and she said, well, I opened up the package and there was nothing in it. And I'm going, what do you mean? And she says, well, it was all sealed up. But when I get to the little plastic container on the inside, there was nothing in it. And I said it was really small. She says, I can guarantee you there was nothing in it. And then I says, how long did this sit in your mailroom? And she says, about an hour. So either in transit or during that hour that was sitting in their mailroom, somehow, some way, that artifact disappeared. And that is a true story. It's out on the internet. People can read about it.
Now, the two pieces that Frank and I initially just recently had analyzed, I drove to Aurora, Colorado. I had it in my hand, and I stayed there the whole time and watched, the lab analysis done by the general manager. I was right there. It was kind of hard for me to find a place to that allowed me to hand deliver it and watch him doing it, because that's my protocol, is to make sure nothing got switched. And I
did exactly the same thing.
And he did the same thing. Yeah,
I did the same thing. I drove it. I hand delivered it up to Albuquerque, and I was there, watched them put it on the machine, watched them analyze it, and I brought the analytical data back with me. Now, interesting enough, I've got another piece that I sent FedEx to some people back east that are doing some preliminary research on it. I made them open the package up live. Actually, they didn't do, they did it live on TV, is what they are, live on one of these live streams. They did the live stream and they opened the package up, and I says, if it's not in there, there's going to be some people that are in trouble. They opened it up and it was there, and it was the right
there,
piece. So it worked, at least this time. So that chain of custody thing is really very, very important, but it can also be very expensive if you have to go and hand deliver the stuff other places other than where you live, to some bigger facility or something. Chuck's in a little better position because he's close to a bigger city than I am, but that chain of custody is very, very important on this. You got to maintain it, because people will take this stuff if they know it's Roswell material. It just disappears. It's weird.
Absolutely. I wanted to let's get back to another video clip here as you guys are closing in on things here. Very short clip, maybe 15 seconds or so.
No, it may not be. It might be just tiny and on the surface. So let's move let's run it again and see what we get.
Look at those professionals.
Here's the dichotomy about this type of investigation. You're field investigators. Chuck and Frank, you're out there, you're in the field, and you'll have filmmakers such as Maximo and Toby come out there and present that to the world. If the connection to those agencies where you can be privy to more data about these materials, you are now employed into the fold, which means that you would then have some sort of a title, top secret, a category, or higher, where at this point in time you can no longer release that information to a filmmaker, to a publicist. You can't do any of that work anymore. So my question comes to you, gentlemen, is, do you still work independently, or if you're approached by a government agency that says, we'll give you all the resources you need, but now all of the facts of what you collect come to us? Or C, is it possible that you are already involved with these government agencies and what you're doing on this show is just a big ruse?
Well, okay, so I'm going to jump in before Chuck gets a chance to talk on this.
Okay.
I
think I hit a nerve, Ken. Here we go.
Yeah, you hit a nerve. You hit a nerve with me. So here's the scoop. No, people are going to say, well, you work at the New Mexico Military Institute in Roswell, and I wear a military uniform, and I have a rank of lieutenant colonel. I am not military, although some people will debate that. So, I mean, I don't carry a military ID with me. I have a state school ID is what I do, because I'm a teacher there. So I'm not affiliated with any government agency other than as a teacher. I do all of this work myself. It's paid for by various people. It's independent people pay for some of it. Most of it I paid for myself. The filmmakers have paid for it, documentary. I have no books. I get paid for the documentaries that I do once in a while, and it's not a whole heck of a lot when you consider how much time it takes for it. However, here's what happens. This is not made up. I'm not making any of this up, and I will freely distribute. All of the information will be open source as fast as I can get it. I will publish it. It's out there if anybody asks me for it. I will put it on programs just like this so people can have it. Now, here's what happens. If the government were to come up to me and say, don't do this anymore, you're probably onto something. We want all your data. We'll share the information that we have with you, but you can't talk about it anymore. What would I do? Sorry, folks. I wouldn't say anything anymore. That would be the end of it for me. Yeah,
I shake your hand. Yes.
I would not disclose a single thing. I would not be a whistleblower. They would, in fact, take care of my idle curiosity, which is to basically prove Roswell, or to prove the existence of extraterrestrials. And in my own heart, my own mind, I would go by the wayside and not write any books or tell any stories other than what I had maybe in the past. Yeah, no, it would become a state secret with me, and that's exactly what I do.
Maximo's checking his producer's bank account right now. He's going to bail you out on that. Okay.
I have to agree with Frank, because I've been on so many podcasts, and my website is not a paid website. You go and when I do investigations, I freely put stuff on there, everything I learned. Matter of fact, if people want to go to my website, you can actually see what minerals, were found. I got the name of the company. I asked their permission, all that stuff. But you have to understand, like what Frank was saying, that we do this. It's all out of our pockets. We're the ones that's driving. We're the one that's paying for it. Like Toby was asking me, he said, "Well, I got some people that that may want to pay for the lab." I'm going, and then there's what's the angle? What do they want out of it? All I want to know is what I've been striving for the last 35 years of being an investigator, and all my life is a proof of extraterrestrial life on this planet. I'm looking for that, and I do that for me because that's my problem. Because I've been said, so many times people will say, "Well, you're so obsessed with this." Okay, I am obsessed. I don't want anybody else to go that route. Hell, I take my family on vacation via UFO investigations. I mean, that's just what we do, and they know that. And so I do it for me. And if someone came up to me and said, "Look, we're going to fill you in, but you can't say anything about it," I'm done, really, because that's my thing. Now I can tell you right now that I know of multiple skunk work facilities where we've had UFO sightings, and when I investigated, I know there's military sites there. I will never disclose that. That's not my job. My job isn't to disclose where the military is. My job for me is to find out proof of extraterrestrials. Both my sons are military. I don't want to mess up anything that could affect our soldiers and the technology that our soldiers are using. Like back in the day when the F-11 7A was flying around the wobbly goblin. You don't want to disclose. I mean, that's we have to think about that too. But as long as they don't bug me, they've called me a couple of times. I've been called a couple of times by individuals asking specific questions, one on cattle mutilations, one on the piece of debris from Roswell and what I know about Roswell. And I answer the questions, and I say, if anytime you want to call me again, I'll let you know. I don't want to break that. There's a fine line there.
Right.
Or that fine line, you may never be seen again. I throw out the name Max Spears. He crossed that. That was a UFO investigator, I believe. I thought he was out of Poland. Crossed that line. He ended up dead later on.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of his mouth.
Access is everything.
Yeah, but Frank's right. We do it for us, and then we freely share it to everybody else. We don't charge anybody, And yes, I lectured at Roswell. They paid me, Yeah. Oh, by the way, I still haven't got paid my gas bill, Toby. But anyway.
Oh, ditto. I get paid to
This
do the
guy.
UFO talk for Roswell too.
Wow.
So I mean,
All right.
Well, we
So
get paid.
that's
labor
But,
of love.
I'm out of,
community service.
For what I got paid to lecture in Roswell. I did 3 lectures. It's less than what I get paid per day on my day job, and I'm out money. Okay. Every time I do a conference and I take a day off of a week, I'm out a whole day's paycheck because I'm a microchip contractor. And so I always take a hit of $500 to $1,000 every time I do a conference. So I don't do a lot of them because it's just too damn expensive for me. But when I do is to get information out to the public, where I can. And that's just what it is. And every TV show I've ever been on, including Alien Highway, I've never made the same amount of money that I would make on my day job. I make more money on my day job than any TV show I've ever been on.
Boy, that's the
There
truth.
must be a reason why I'm doing this. Well, because that's why they call me a UFO nut.
Let's I wanted to kind of wrap this up because I do want to get into, speaking of disclosure, some things that are coming up. So I wanted to maybe wrap this up with the last video. And Toby, thanks for sending these to me. It's about 1.5 minutes long. So let's take a look at this, and then maybe we'll get on to our next subject. So let's see where this takes us.
What do you think it is?
Right there on the surface. Right here. Right at the end of my foot. Whatever it is. Oh. And it's not deep. Right on the surface, whatever the hell it is. And it's will be pretty good size. I can pinpoint it.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Right underneath that dot.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
dig. Now the issue at hand is we're right out here where people park.
So you want to bring your
Yeah, I will run
no,
over the top.
okay, I was going to just.
Here we go.
Oh, that's
Your
my
ring.
ring. Forget it.
Do you know how many times I've done that ring thing?
I just hear those old man noises. Oh.
I see what you mean by the different tones.
Oh, by the way, that was iron. By the way, I knew that
Yeah.
like right away.
That was
I wanted
Chuck
to,
digging up his gas check.
I have I have the same type of metal detector, different tones for different metals. In the last half hour or so, 20 minutes, I wanted to get into something with you and let everyone know, if you're not aware, that next Wednesday is a hearing that's going on. It's going to Tim Burchett, who is a Republican from Tennessee, is going to run this committee. And according to Representative Burchett, they're going to take the gloves off this time. This has been backed by Chuck Schumer, Mike Rounds, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Anna Paulina Luna. So this is a bipartisan effort that they want to introduce legislation that agencies that collect and submit records on UAP have to do so to a review board in no less than 300 days. And the representatives who are asking claim they're just being stonewalled by the Pentagon and especially the United States Air Force. Among those to testify is a gentleman named David Grush, who was a National Geospace Intelligence Agency employee. And he is the whistleblower that said we are in possession of partial exotic craft. Commander David Fravor, who you might recognize the name, who engaged the Tic Tac off the coast of California back in 2014, I believe. And Ryan Graves, who tracked these things daily from the USS Princeton, who would radio coordinates to anybody who was in the air. They're all going to testify. So my question generally, and you can all open up on this, is basically, what do you foresee coming out of these hearings? Because it seems like when a bipartisan effort happens, a line has been crossed. Because the last UAP report disclosure, I thought personally it was a whole lot of nothing that people were excited about, but in the interest of national security. And I got a lot of thoughts on this, and that's fine. I don't know, whenever time, we'll have you back sometime to flesh it out. But what do you guys see coming of these hearings next week? What are your expectations, and what's the reality of it?
Well, I find it interesting because I talked to Tim Burchett. He actually made a virtual appearance at our conference back in July. Actually, I think he was June 29th or 30th he appeared. So the House Oversight Committee hearings that are going to be happening are basically going to be testimony and then questions and answers from the three individuals you stated.
Right.
Obviously, David Grush will probably bring the most explosive claims, I would say, seeing as he was working for the NGA IG and actually investigating reports of a cover-up of crash retrievals, the pilots of these objects being found. And he's interesting because he filed an IG complaint that he was being harassed because he had found out this information, and that report was deemed credible and urgent. So that right away, that's a big deal. I've talked to Ross Coulthard, who did the News Nation interview with him, and he's vetted him completely. And I have my own sources. Obviously, I knew about this guy months before it became public, and he is who he says he is. He was working where he says he was. As far as his claims, I believe them, but I don't have any proof to validate them. So what I think is the House Oversight Committee hearing is going to be Ryan Graves, who's worked with the AIAA, and he's also involved with the Americans for Safe Aerospace, I think is the new organization he started. I may be wrong on the name. He tracked these things on his radar and FLIR daily back in 2018. So he can speak to the aspect of near misses and how whatever these objects are, they have an effect on the safety of our aviators that are flying, whether they're doing training missions or whether they're out, on patrol, whatever. So he brings that. Fravor saw the Tic Tac with his own eyes. So that's obviously his testimony. And all these people that testified this committee, this all becomes public record.
Right.
So I think that's the significance of this. I am not expecting personally any new videos or footage or photos, but I have been hearing for the past few months that the Senate is looking to hold hearings possibly in September. And I think that could be where we get more new, visual, I'd say, evidence.
Right. Yeah. There's the leak. Frank, what do you think? I mean, we'll just go around the panel here. What's your expectations of this?
You know what? Here's what is. So help me if they just come back and say, for the sake of national security, it's all classified. Well,
yeah, here we go.
They need to tell us. They need to tell us, meaning the general people. They need to tell us what it is. And if they can't tell us what it is, and they need to basically come forward and tell us what it's not, which would be almost as good if they can eliminate all the nots. And they kind of alluded, the representative kind of alluded to that. And he says, well, if Putin's ego is so good, if it was the Russians, Ukraine would not be there, which is true. If they had that kind of technology. And then he went back and said, well, you know what, the Chinese own us, and well, they already own us. So if they had this technology, oh, well, they just own us more or whatever. So you know what, I would like to see something come out of it where they let the general public, all of us, know what it is and not hide behind the veil of national security, or I'm sorry, but it's classified. You know what, to have a craft that can run rings around everything that we've got out there, it's not ours. And they, and to come forward and say, well, we don't have any information on this and we don't know what it is. Well, we don't know what it is either. So tell us. That's what it boils down to. They, what is that saying? Missouri, from Missouri, show me the show me state.
Show me. Yeah.
Show me. That's right. Show me. Let us know what's going on. Tell us something. Just don't tell us that it's classified. I hate that term. Now, going back to what I said, it's if we have that kind of technology that we're using ourselves, then we should use it for the good of mankind, instead of keeping it a secret. It's just my opinion.
Energy source, but it's always
absolutely.
The first thing is always going to be, how can we weaponize this? Just to give you some context before we continue, in April they tracked around 650 incidents, which is about 140 more since January of this year, and 171 of those reports, the reports are they demonstrated flight characteristics that just don't make any sense, that we can't reconcile. That number is probably being upgraded because of the sensitivity of our tracking programs now, because we've kind of increased the sensitivity of those things. But already witnesses have dropped out, and Congress doesn't believe they're being as transparent as they possibly can. But to me, when you have these things flying over the United States airspace and sensitive military bases, that is the very definition of a national security threat. So just to give, some numbers, throw some numbers out there to give everybody an idea of what we're talking about here. Maximo, where do you come down on this? And we'll give Chuck the last word.
Okay, I have to tell you there is one report that is missing. Toby know what I am talking about. Although we are not people that is involved, probably like someone like a whistleblower, insider, but we had a major. Can I share it, Toby? Are you okay with that? We had a major sighting in Roswell. It was something that I still can't understand what was that. So I think that we are dealing with something that is beyond our comprehension, beyond just craft. And about the hearings, I would love to hear something like in the future they are going to change the way they communicate about these kind of events. Like I have like a perspective here in Latin America, Mexico, Chile, Argentina. They have something like when something huge that is out of the boundaries and it is something else for the militaries and the government, they share it with people. So I would love to see something like that. Maybe now from the future, I know that they are going to keep secrets, but like they did with the TikToks, okay, this is something new. This happened this year. This happened this month. Don't go to the archives to try to find something to share, make people chill. That's my hopes about that.
Chuck, and do you think that, I mean, the gloves and sticks are going to be on the ice with this one, and they're going to get to the bottom of it, or is it just going to be, you know, typical bullshit? Or, I mean, where would you like to see this going as opposed to where you think it's going to go?
Well, I kind of like the way it's going now. I mean, I've been doing this over 35 years, and you know, the names, the places. I mean, those are the only things that's changed, really, because you know, the past 3-4 decades, we've had whistleblowers, we've had military come out, and it's always been there. Okay, it's always been there. Nothing's changed, really. You know, it's just like I said, the names change. You know, different, you know, people in Congress now. What's nice now is because of social media that it's really hard now to suppress information, especially when everybody's got a camera or you know, video on their phone. When they see something, they get it right out to social media. So it's getting really hard, you know, for the disinformation, because that's what it used to be.
Right.
You know, they try to keep it as quiet as possible. And it's true that, you know, you're going to have that aspect of the government that wants its technology for military. That's just, you know, it's common sense, human. You know, it's what, you know, to protect whatever. And I also agree that, you know, if there is, you know, craft out there that are, you know, defying the physics as we know it, that aren't polluting the earth, how come we're not driving Jetsons cars around and do, you know, or you know, things like that we don't have to worry about, you know, what's going on around us with the planet. The problem is, and I always throw this out too, that I think it's going to be baby steps. And I think that for every hearing we have, that's more positive. It's going to take time. We got to go back to 2019 with COVID, and everybody saw the panic of the virus, of the toilet paper, the paper towels, the hoarding, all that. Now you got to remember that if they just come right out and say aliens are here, it's all hell's breaking loose. We've seen it with COVID, and we're going to see it even worse now that we have this intelligent, highly intelligent beings that have been here for centuries, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, Chuck. We're ready for it. We can handle an existential threat.
I don't think we can.
Couldn't handle a virus.
No, we can't handle that. We can't handle the virus. If we can't handle a virus, we can't handle aliens. There's no way in hell we can do that.
I think we could handle the alien thing, Chuck. I really do. The virus was a matter of life and death.
Well, so I mean,
this alien thing is a change in our societal thinking. Is exactly what it is.
I think if they come out slowly, we could. No. You know, it's baby steps, and eventually, you know, we'll get there. But you know, you're going to get people shooting at airplanes. You know, and that's the reality. The reality is, you know, I was deputy for 8 years. I know there's a lot of stupid people out there. I've had to deal with them. There's a lot of people that, you know, that I don't want to say that they're not very smart, but they don't think, you know, logically. Let's just say we do, and of course, you know, I have no problem with it because, you know, like Toby and Maximo, my sister and I've had our own experience with the UFO where we've communicated. So I'm very comfortable with that. What I'm worried about are the other people out there. Hell, we got people that are carjacking. We have people that are you know, going into stores and freely and openly stealing stuff out of stores, and Walmarts and the Targets and stuff are telling their employees to let them go, let them do it. I mean, this is the type of people we have right now that are just doing that blatant crap. And now we got to worry about what's going to happen, what those people are going to do if we come out and say, hey, there's aliens here. It's not going to look pretty. It's going to be a mess for
them. Chuck,
why do you look at me when you say that, Chuck?
Chuck, let's have the aliens land and throw a great big party with free beer and free booze and a concert, and I bet the whole world will rejoice.
Yeah, no, that could be. The problem is as soon as, and I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a problem. is,
Oh, yeah.
If the aliens like Taylor Swift, we got no problems.
well, I mean, it's all they got to say is the first question is going to be out of everybody's mouth as soon as someone says the government says, "Yeah, it looks like it's extraterrestrials." Why are they here? And then every negative thing that's ever been involved with UFOs is abductions, people
social
dying,
media. Yep.
blah 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 blah. I have friends that were abducted. Da da da. They stole babies. They're doing this. And then you have the religious people. They're demonic. They're demons. God put. I mean, my gosh, it's going to be a mess. Now,
Well,
if you
the
think
thing that I'm
logically,
interested,
it's not going to be.
yeah, the thing I'm interested in this real quickly is among his testimony, I understand that Dave Grush is going to testify, and this is where it gets quirky because it's kind of in the third person, because he was told and he heard that some of the pilots of these vehicles encountered were malevolent. And if that's part of the testimony, then
that's going to help.
Here's the whole thing is, and I know we keep using the term extraterrestrial, but if you actually listen to Grush's interview, he began talking about multidimensional. So
yeah, we
had that.
I think the reality of what's out there is a lot more not crazy, but I think it's not just one thing, in my opinion. I think we're looking at multiple things here. I think it's very complex.
We're a group of individuals that are, we're very versed in this, and we can talk about it logically, and we understand when you're talking multidimensional and you're talking about other things like coming from our future or whatever. We all understand that because we've gone all through this with research investigation. It's those people that it's kind of new. My gosh, it was only like 10 years ago. I was at Missouri, the Show Me State, and there was an individual that saw an airplane that was doing a vertical takeoff, and he didn't realize we had that technology. So you have those type of people too.
We landed on the moon. Wow.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. You just have those, and that's going to cause some problems. But I think we're going in the right direction with baby steps, releasing more.
I will agree. I will agree with Chuck.
But I think if they just came right out and just hit us with it, you're going to see looting. You're going to see riots. You're going to see. Oh my God.
I am going to ask all of you gentlemen to hold fast. We are against the clock. We're out of time here, but don't hang up from your end. We just got to close out the show for our audience. We want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And this conversation is not over. We've got to get you back again because there's so much more ground to cover with regards to this. So, but those of you watching us tonight, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys same time next week. Until then, have a good rest of the week. Gentlemen, don't hang up, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
You guys out there. Thank you to the chat, too.
Yep.
It was a pleasure to serve mankind.